Hi guys, I hope you are all doing well and keeping good health. Today we shall discuss NCERT Class 7, our past Chapter 9, the making of regional cultures. Regional cultures means we have many regions in our country and we have to understand this. We need 2, 3 areas and their culture, their food and all these things. See the commonest ways of describing people. What are the commonest ways of describing people of India? One commonest way is language. They speak. Example, Tamil, Oriya, Telugu, Malayalam, Marathi, Gujarati, whatever language they speak, that is tells about their description. Different kinds of food. What kind of food they are taking? Some people are taking wheat made food, some are taking rice made food, and like that we do find lot of differences. Different kinds of clothes. Some wear Punjabi dress in northern part of India, South India. Some ladies will wear saris, and of course jeans pant and bunions are used by both North Indians and South Indians. Different kinds of poetry. Poetry is not same. Some take nature as the theme, some take, you can say, the quality as the theme, some take different kinds of items as a theme. That's why poetry also differ from person to person and region to region also. Different kinds of dance forms. We have different kinds of classical dances as well as folk dances. And we have classical dances such as Bharatanatyam, Kuchipudi, Kathak, Kathakali, and then Manipuri, Odisha. These are the important dance forms of classical nature. And we also have dances of folk type also. Different kinds of music and paintings, because we have different types of musical schools in our country. We have Hindustani musical school and Carnatic music. In paintings also we have, you can say, different kinds of paintings, cloud painting, miniature painting, wall painting, and also the cartoons. All these will differ from one country. This is the beautiful map of South India. Here we have some important dynasties of South India. They are Kadambas and Gangas. In some parts of Karnataka, Alupa, in southern part of Karnataka, near Bangalore, Cheras, that is located in Kerala, Pandya, southern part of Tamil Nadu, Cholas, middle part of Tamil Nadu, Pallavas, northern part of Tamil Nadu, Vengi, that is and Andhra Pradesh, Kalinga, Orissa, Chalukyas, Maharashtra, these are the kingdoms. Cheras, now we will discuss Cheras in the development of Malayalam. Cheras and dynasties has promoted Malayalam language, which is the official language, which is the state language spoken all over Kerala. The Chera kingdom of Mahodayapuram, this is Mahodayapuram, Perumals, was established in the 9th century in the southwest part of the peninsula. This is peninsula which is covering 3 sides of water. Spoken in this area, Malayalam is spoken in this Chera kingdom. The rulers introduced the Malayalam language and script in their inscriptions. They also drew upon Sanskrit traditions in addition to Malayalam. The temple theatre of Kerala, which is traced to this period, temple theatre is, you can say, the existing during the Chera times, borrowed stories from the Sanskrit epics, which are the epics of Ramayana and Mahabharata. The first literary works in Malayalam dated to about the 12th century are directly indebted to Sanskrit. Interestingly enough, the 14th century text, the Leela Tilakam, dealing with grammar and poetics, was composed in Mani Paravalam, literally diamonds and corals, referring to the two languages, that is Sanskrit and the Malayalam language. So these are referred as diamonds and corals Sanskrit and Malayalam. This is the language Malayalam language was promoted and developed, patronized by the Chera kingdoms of Mahodaya. An early Kerala inscriptions composed in Malayalam language. This is, you can see, this is the early inscriptions which is written in the hard surface, either on stone or you can say the stone slabs or copper. This is one of the example. Jagannatha cult Puri. Puri is located in Orissa. There is one important cult developed, Jagannatha cult. In other regions, regional cultures grew around religious traditions. The best example of this process is the cult of Jagannatha, literally Lord of the World, a name for Vishnu, at Puri, Orissa. To date, the local tribal people make the wooden image of the deity, which suggests that the deity was originally a local god who was later identified with Vishnu. In the 12th century, one of the most important rulers of the Ganga dynasty, Anantavarman, decided to erect a temple for Purushottama Jagannatha at Puri. Subsequently, in 1230 CE, King Ananga Bhima III dedicated his kingdom to the deity and proclaimed himself as the deputy of the god. As the temple gained a lot of importance as a center of pilgrimage, its authority in social and political matters also increased. All those who conquered Orissa, such as the Mughals, the Marathas, and the English East India Company, attempted to gain control over the temple. They felt that this would make their rule acceptable to the local people. That's why what happened. All have tried to establish their hold and command on the temple of Jagannatha, which is located in Puri, where we can see a new cult was developed, which is besides the Hinduism. This is the Jagannatha temple at Puri, located in Puri. This is the Puri in Orissa. And here one important person, Rajput king is Rana Sankha, Rana Pratap Singh. The Rajput and the traditions of heroism, and the Rajputs are meant for heroism, and they are warrior class, they are Kshatriya class, and their main subject is to, their main function is to protect their subjects. In the 19th century, the regions that constitutes most of the present-day Rajasthan was called Rajputana by the British, while this may suggest that this was an area that was inhabited only or mainly by Rajputs. This is only partly true. There were several groups of people also lived in Rajasthan in many areas of northern and central India. And of course, there are several peoples other than Rajputs who live in Rajasthan. However, the Rajputs were often recognized as contributing to the distinctive culture of Rajasthan. These cultural traditions were closely linked with the ideals and aspirations of rulers. From about the 8th century, most of the present-day state of Rajasthan was ruled by various Rajput families. Prithviraj was one such ruler. Stories about Rajput heroes were recorded in poems and songs and precious also. These are the regions we have discussed in this chapter. That is Rajasthan. In Rajasthan, we have Jaipur, Ajmer, Mewar, Chittorgarh, Jodhpur, Bikaner. And in South India, Kerala, we have discussed Cheras. And then in Orissa, we discussed East Ganga Kingdom. Lucknow is our area. In Andhra, Venkis. In Karnataka, Gadambas. These are some of the important kingdoms we are going to discuss in this chapter. This is, you can say, the a view dance form Kathak. Kathak is a dance form, and ideally concentrated in the northern part of India, especially in UP, Delhi, Haryana, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and all these states. We do find the story of Kathak beyond. We can see the regional frontiers. If heroic traditions can be found in different regions in different forms, the same is true of dance. The term Kathak is derived from Katha, a word used in Sanskrit and other languages for storytelling. The Kathaks were originally a caste of storytellers in temples of northern part of India, like UP, Haryana, Rajasthan, who embellished their performances with gestures and songs. Kathak began evolving into a distinct mode of dance in the 15th and 16th centuries with the spread of Bhakti movement in northern India. The legends of Radha Krishna were enacted in folk plays called Rasa Leela, which combined folk dance with the basic gestures of the Kathak storytellers. Under Mughal emperors and their nobles, Kathak was performed in the royal court and palaces, where it acquired its present features and developed into a form of dance with a distinctive style. Subsequently, it developed into traditions, gharanas in the court of Rajasthan, Jaipur, and the other in Lucknow under the patronage of Wajid Ali Shah, the last Nawab of Awadh. Awadh is nothing in UP. It grew into a major form by the third quarter of the 19th century. It was firmly entrenched as a dance form not only in these two regions but in the adjoining area of Assam, present-day Punjab, Haryana, Jammu and Kashmir, Bihar. This is the dance posture of Kathak. And Maharana Ram Singh too, playing the holy in a Rajput is an example of miniature painting, Akbar resting during a hunt. This is a Mughal miniature, this is a Rajput miniature painting. Miniature painting means painting done on the small scale and also in the textbooks. Textbook painting is nothing but miniature painting, printing of patterns, the traditions of miniature. Miniatures, as their very name suggests, are small sized paintings generally done in watercolor and cloth or paper. The earliest miniatures were on palm leaves or wood. Some of the most beautiful of these found in western India were used to illustrate Jaina texts. Mughal emperors Akbar, Jahangir, and Shah Jahan patronized highly skilled painters who primarily illustrated manuscripts containing historical accounts and poetry. These were generally painted in brilliant colors and portrayed court sceneries, scenes of palaces, scenes of hunting, and other aspects of social life. With the decline of the Mughal Empire, many painters moved out of the Delhi capitals and the royal courts of the emerging regional states, and they went to the regional states from the Mughal court. As a result, Mughal artistic taste influenced the regional courts of Deccan and the Rajput courts of Rajasthan. So, after the decline of Mughal Empire, and these paintings have been transformed into the regional levels Deccan and Rajput courts of Rajasthan. By the last 17th century, by the late 17th century, this region had developed a bold and intense style of miniature painting called Basoli. The most popular text to be painted here was Bhanudatta's Rasa Manja. Nadir Shah's invasion and the conquest of Delhi in 1739 resulted in the migration of Mughal artists to the hills to escape the uncertainties of the climate. This is, you can see, beautiful paintings of Krishna, Radha, and her companion Pahari miniature paintings. Kangra. Kangra is located in Himachal Pradesh. By the mid 18th century, the Kangra artist developed a style which breathed a new spirit into miniature painting. The sources of inspiration was the Vaishnava traditions. This is a royal tiger of Bengal, a closer with Bengal. Bengal means both East Bengal and West Bengal. East Bengal is nothing but Bangladesh and West Bengal is Bangla. These are the buildings of West Bengal or East Bengal, the growth of regional language. As we saw at the outset, we often tend to identify regions in terms of the language spoken by the people. So we assume that people in Bengal always spoke Bengali language. However, what is interesting is that while Bengali is now recognized as a language derived from Sanskrit, early Sanskrit texts mid-first millennium BCE suggest that the people of Bengal did not speak Sanskrit language. However, then how then did the new language emerge? This is the question. See it. This is the Bengali language, beautiful language of Bengali in Western Bengal and Eastern Bengal. From the 8th century, Bengal became the center of a regional kingdom under the Palas who ruled in Bengal between the 14th and 16th centuries. Bengal was ruled by the sultans who were independent of the rulers in Delhi. In 1586, when Akbar conquered Bengal, it formed the nucleus of the Bengal Suba. While Persian was the language of administration, Bengali developed as a regional language. In fact, by the 15th century, the Bengal group of dialects came to be united by a common literary language based on the spoken language of the western part of the region, now known as West Bengal. Thus, although Bengali is derived from Sanskrit, it passed through several stages of evolution. Early Bengali literature may be divided into two categories, one indebted to Sanskrit and the other independent of it. The first includes translations of the Sanskrit epics, the Mangala Kavyas, literally auspicious poems dealing with local deities, and Bhakti literature such as the biographies of Chaitanya Deva, the leader of the Vaishnava Bhakti movement. The second includes Nath literature such as the songs of Mainamati and Gopi Chandra stories concerning the worship of Dharma Thakur and fairy tales, folk tales, and ballads. Pirs and temples in Bengal. From the 16th century, people began to migrate in large number from the less fertile western Bengal to the forested and marshy areas of southeastern Bengal. As they moved eastwards, they cleared forest and brought the land under rice cultivation. Gradually, local communities of fisher folk and shifting cultivators, often tribals, merged with the new communities of peasants. This coincided with the establishment of Mughal control over Bengal with their capital in the heart of the eastern delta at Dhaka. Dhaka is the present capital of Bangladesh. The early settlers sought some order and assurance in the unstable conditions of the new settlements. These were provided by community leaders who also functioned as teachers and adjudicators and were sometimes ascribed with supernatural powers. People referred to them with affection and respect as peers. This is one of the important auspices of peers. This term included saints or Sufis and other religious personalities, daring colonizers and defied soldiers, various Hindu and Buddhist deities, and even animistic spirits. The cult of peers became very popular and their shrines can be found everywhere in Bengal. A double-roofed thatched hut, you can see here. A four-roofed temple with a tower. These are the two important building techniques adopted. Now we can discuss what is that. Bengal also witnessed a temple building spree from the late 15th century, which culminated in the 19th century. Temples and other religious structures were often built by individuals or groups who were becoming powerful to both demonstrate their power and proclaim their piety. Many of the modest brick and terracotta temples in Bengal were built with the support of several low social groups such as Kolu, oil pressures, OBC caste, and Kansal, well metal workers, this is also OBC caste. The coming of the European trading companies created new economic opportunities. Many families belonging to these social groups availed of these as their social and economic positions improved. Krishna with gopis terracotta plate from the Shamaraya temple, Vishnu. This is a beautiful example of Shamaraya temple at Vishnupur, West Bengal. They proclaimed their status through the construction of the temples. When local deities once worshipped in thatched huts in villages gained the recognition of Brahmanas, their images began to be housed in temples. Temples began to copy the double-roofed dochala or four-roofed chauchala structure of the thatched huts. This led to the evolution of the typical Bengal style in temple architecture. This is the beautiful architecture techniques adopted in Bengal in the comparatively more complex four-roofed structure. Four triangular roofs placed on the four walls move up to coverage, converge on a curved line on a point. Temples were usually built on a square platform. The interior was relatively plain, but the outer walls of many temples were decorated with paintings, ornamental tiles, or terracotta tablets. In some temples, particularly in Vishnupur, in the Bankura district of West Bengal, such decorations reached a high degree of excellence. Is a common food of Bengal. Fish as food in Bengal. Fond of fish curry, fish. Traditional food habits are generally based on locally available items of food. Bengal is a riverine climate which produces plenty of rice and fish. Understandably, these two items figure prominently in the menu of even poor Bengalis. Fishing has always been an important occupation in Bengali literature, has focused a lot on the fish and rice. Bengali literature also contains several references to fish. What is more, terracotta plaques on the walls of temples in Bihar, Buddhist monasteries depict scenes of fish being dressed and taken to the market in baskets. Fish curry and rice is a common food there. Fish being dressed for domestic consumption. Terracotta plate from the Vishalakshi temple, Arambagh. Brahmanas were not allowed to eat non-vegetarian food, but the popularity of fish in the local diet made the Brahmanical authorities relax this prohibition for the Bengali Brahmins. The Brihadharma Purana, a 13th century Sanskrit text from Bengal, permitted the local Brahmanas to eat certain varieties of fish. That's why today most of the Bengali Brahmins are non-vegetarians because they fond of fish. Is a fish, beautiful fish curry made in Thank you for your patient time. Bye bye. Till next.